to help really shape and talk about the impact of his legacy on not just other soldiers who wanted to be like him, Del, but the rest of us who looked to him, didn't care what he was registered as, just wanted to follow where he led. And I wonder, when you look at weapons of mass destruction going before the UN, and what he felt, the remorse, as you said, for letting his country down, the bad intelligence, if you will, where does that stand in his greater legacy?
I think if you look at great leaders of the 21st century, you are going to look at Colin Powell, you're going to look at Nelson Mandela, you're going to look at Barack Obama. The fact that all three are African Americans is no coincidence. It is who we are in this country. As I was working on our 10 o'clock show, to tell you the truth, I was just remembering the title of a book that I wrote concerning what the CIA did in Africa was entitled The Pottery Barn Rules, because of that quote from Colin Powell before going into the Gulf War. He said, if you break it, you're going to own it. And that is the reason that he gave for not wanting to go into Baghdad. And you think about where we are now with trying to get out of Afghanistan. We finally did. It was ugly. We broke it. We own it. And you think about the rise of ISIL. You think about the rise of the Islamic State in places like Africa. You're seeing a world right now that reflects the wisdom that was ignored, and that was the wisdom of Colin Powell. So as we talk about his legacy, we can talk about the man, but we also have to talk about the fact that this is a way of life among people who recognize that America is a nation of immigrants. And because we're a nation of immigrants, all of us come from a place that was probably worse off than we are here. And trying to make this place a better place is what Colin Powell and others like him wanted to do. You know, imagine Nelson Mandela without those 28 years in Robben Island. Would he have been the same person? Are we a better country because we come from different places that are worse off? And have we now become a country that is now starting to look like Europe in the sense that we don't know how to deal with prosperity? We don't know how to watch out for our fellow human being. We don't know how to watch out for the coal miner in West Virginia or Kentucky, or for that matter, the person that rides rodeos in Wyoming. We say, well, you don't get us and we don't like you. And Colin Powell was one of those ones that saw the United States of America, not the separate states of America.
Yeah, and he brought everybody together. And you mentioned those three men, all very great men who were tremendous leaders. Nelson Mandela, obviously, first president, black president of South Africa. We know about Barack Obama in 2008. But let's go back 21 years ago to the time when we were talking about him and people were bringing up his name as being a presidential candidate. And obviously, you said that his wife, you know, talked him out of doing that. He endorsed George Bush, who won, even though it was controversial over Al Gore at that time. Looking back, from what you remember, had he run for president, how possible would it have been that he would have been the first black president of the United States?
He would have won. And he knew it. Everybody knew it. He was that popular. I mean, imagine generals like Eisenhower coming out of war with all the stars. He was everything that you wanted a military man to be. He stood tall in the saddle, so to speak. He was that guy. He was the prototypical president of the United States. Look at these images of him. You know, he was, as I wrote in a book, the prototypical view of what America wanted from its first black president. He was somebody that everybody recognized and actually respected. So he would have won, and everybody knew it, and I think he knew it. And I think that's one of the things that people don't understand about people like Colin Powell, which is that running for president is one thing. Becoming the president is another thing, because after you become president, you have to run the country. And guys like Colin Powell knew what their lane was. He was a military man. He was very good at organizing troops and leading troops, but who really wants to be the person that's in the budget battle that we're seeing right now unfolding on Capitol Hill, debt ceilings and toxic politics? Colin Powell saw that coming and didn't want to have anything to do with it, which may be the wisest thing that he ever did.
So then, Del, then a question. Why? If this was a man who didn't want to be political, why did he endorse President Obama when he did? Because others said, hey, he's doing it because he's black, Obama's black. Why did he step out at that moment and say, this is what I'm doing, this is who I believe in? And what did that endorsement mean? He did it twice, but really the first time around.
Look at the man that you're seeing on your screen right now, the ribbons, the stars on his shoulder. This is a man who loved America. This is a man who actually fought for America. This is a man who led troops for America. This is a man who understood what democracy stood for. Think about the 4 years of Donald Trump, a man who came down that escalator and basically trashed everything that America was, all of the institutions. Colin Powell believed in those institutions. He endorsed Barack Obama because Barack Obama was the best man for the job. And keep in mind, Barack Obama was running against a military man. John McCain was beloved in this town. The difference between John McCain and Barack Obama during that particular campaign was America was in trouble. It needed somebody that had the energy to be able to stop us from going off a financial cliff. And we were headed towards that financial cliff. Colin Powell was a man that looked at Barack Obama as someone who not only was an African American, Barack Obama was smart and is smart. And think about what we had in Barack Obama that Colin Powell saw. 8 years of a White House without scandal. Not a single scandal, with the exception, I think, maybe of one time, his kids sticking their tongue out at a camera and him wearing a tan suit. How we long for those days. You know, and it's funny, there's the Simon and Garfunkel song where they say, where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio? I think there will come a time when we say, where have you gone, Colin Powell? Because he really was that towering of a figure, not only in America, but also in Washington, D.C. He represented the best of who we are and who we could be.
But that's what I was even going to ask you that question. Where have you gone, you know, Colin Powell? Because who is today's Colin Powell? Now that he's gone, is there anyone that exemplifies everything that he stood for in Washington, in politics, as leaders today?
I don't know. And I wish I did. I mean, think about where we are as a society. We're measured by our tweets. We're measured by our social media presence. You say something outrageous and all of a sudden you get 15 million followers because they think that you're just as crazy as they are. As opposed to what he said with the Pottery Barn rules, saying you break it, you own it. That was not popular at the time. We wanted to march into Baghdad. You know that, Mike. You're a military guy. Everybody said, look at this. Look how fast they fell. Desert Storm. We thought we were going up against the elite Republican Guard. We thought we were looking at a 2-year war, World War III. And then it was over almost as quickly as it began, and there was that thirst in Washington saying, let's go further. Let's try out all these new tanks that we have and these guns that we have and these weapons that we have. And Colin Powell said, no, it's like the Pottery Barn. If you break it, you own it. And he was right. The difference being, that was then, this is now. And imagine if we had just had more people like Colin Powell. Imagine if Barack Obama had been the second black president of the United States, where we would be as opposed to where we are right now.
Well, we're waiting to hear from the former president, the current president. His reaction is pouring in about, and again, this has taken all of us, so many who hadn't expected this. The news of him being at Walter Reed had not leaked. The family was able to announce his passing. But we can put up for a reaction. Stacey Abrams, who is speaking about Secretary Colin Powell's death. Godspeed to Secretary Colin Powell, who led with integrity, admitted fallibility, and defended democracy. Deepest condolences to his loved ones and friends. Politics is, you know, ebb and flow and generational, if you will. Stacey Abrams came onto the scene. Most know her as from that failed governor bid in the state of Georgia. The tremendous respect that Colin Powell has across generations, across party, Dell, as we wait for more reaction to pour in. What do you expect people to say, even in this time where it has become so toxic?
You know, it's funny that that tweet is the tweet that you read, because Mike just asked me who is out there like Colin Powell. Stacey Abrams. You know, sometimes men think in terms of a male dynamic, but Stacey Abrams is someone who won by losing. You know, she lost the race for governor where you are in Georgia. She didn't want to lose. She knew that she probably was cheated, but rather than run around on the sulking tour, she turned her loss into power, and it's political power. She was in Washington and Virginia over the weekend campaigning for Terry McAuliffe, the man who is running for governor of Virginia, because her voice is that strong and that reason. Think about it, the fact that you have the former president saying she would have been a better governor than the governor that you have right now. I mean, you talk about your backhanded compliments, but it was a compliment nonetheless. I think sometimes as African Americans, the thing that we are afraid to do is to recognize the overwhelming power of what we have done in this great American experiment. And I think when we look back at the death of a Colin Powell, for instance, we will probably say the same thing with Barack Obama. We will recognize that there is something about us that we push down because it may wind up being true. We may wind up being very good at being leaders. And we have been pushed down for so long because of issues like slavery and Jim Crow that when we rise to the surface, America rises with us. When we fail, America fails as well. And we're in one of those gulfs right now where you wonder, how are we going to get out of this morass? Because it's like exactly what you were saying. Where have they gone? Joe DiMaggio, where have they gone? Colin Powell. Or perhaps even more important, where have they gone immigrants who make this country great again?
Can I ask you, Del, if you, because to so many, he did this thing perfectly. Okay, he threaded the needle. He was a tremendous leader. Did he talk about race enough? Because he didn't seem to talk about it verbally, but I guess through his actions and becoming and ascending to the heights that he did. Of course, he was such an example. But could he have talked more about race?
I think you always can. And I think that's the danger of being black in America, is that, and I'll give you an example. How many of us right now are being defined by being black? A good black male anchor, a good black female anchor. Does it really matter that you're a good black anchor, or does it matter that you are a good anchor? We are defined by race, and I think sometimes when you get to the level of a Colin Powell or Barack Obama, you simply want to be defined by how good you are. Randall Robinson, the former head of Trans-Africa, who was one of the people instrumental in getting Nelson Mandela out of prison, we had a spirited conversation 2 o'clock in the morning and saying, Kit, and he said of Barack Obama, people forget the man is just damn smart. Randall talked like that. He said he was the head of the Harvard Law Review. You don't get that because you're black. You get that because you're good. You know, and a lot of times people like Barack Obama and Colin Powell are somewhat diminished by race. You know, Tiger Woods, if you put it in the sports world, was a damn good golfer. You know, yes, he was a damn good golfer who was black. And I think when you get to the level of a Colin Powell, you sometimes find it insulting that people want to put you in that bubble. And that's the bubble that he refused to be in. And yet so many of us need to hear the guy in the bubble say, hey, it's okay to be proud. Back in the 60s, I'm black and I'm proud. When was the last time you heard anybody say that? Although perhaps we should say it more.
Yeah, and I mean, he was a proud black man, and I think that's what made it so remarkable, that he was a black man and he was still, even back then, well respected by so many on both sides, black, white, indifferent, it didn't matter. They just liked Colin Powell. The thoughts keep coming in for Colin Powell. Here's Al Sharpton. Here's what he's tweeting now. He says, my condolences to the family of Colin Powell. Though we disagreed on many issues, I always respected him and was proud of his achievements. When he and I ran into each other and conversed, I always feeling he was a sincere and committed man to what he believed in. Rest in peace. That word sincere. I think that may be one of the main adjectives that really describe, just brings up who he is. And that's something that's missing today, is sincerity. You know, just being true to who you are. And once again, like you mentioned, just admitting. And it's so refreshing when you see a politician or a leader just admit when, hey, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, but we move on from here. And I think that's what Colin Powell is all about.
Mike and Sharon, this will be one of those moments in history where we look back and we will say, I remember where I was. That perhaps speaks louder to who Colin Powell was and his role in history than anything else. I was literally stunned when I came downstairs and saw the message indicating that, you guys were trying to find me for the show, because my heart sank. Forget about being the journalist. My heart sank. This was one of those people that you just admired. And the world is, there are so few of them now that to lose one, specifically at this point in time, is not only a tragedy for Black America, it is a tragedy for America, and it is a tragedy for the world, because this was a guy that had that vision thing. This is the guy that saw America, like I said, for what it could be, as opposed to what it sometimes winds up being. That moment in Congress about a month ago, when they asked the General Milley about critical race theory, and he says, yes, I study critical race theory. I study, Chairman Mao. I want to know what I'm up against. Colin Powell could have said exactly that same thing with exactly the same towering spirit, because you not only respected him as a great military man, you respected him because he was smart, because he was brilliant.
Well, if you're just joining us on Start Your Day, you are joining us and getting the news that General Colin Powell has passed away at the age of 84 inside Walter Reed Medical Center. His family making the announcement. General Powell died of COVID complications, though he was fully vaccinated. And Del, you've talked so eloquently about so many of his authentic qualities, and I want to know from you, he escaped any skepticism from Black people working alongside both President Bush's, a soldier, a Republican. There was no mistrust or skepticism. How did he escape that as he served his country in these administrations?
Because politics isn't really about whether you are Republican or Democratic. It is about where you stand on issues. Colin Powell was a Republican because he believed in a smaller government. He believed in fiscal responsibility, the things that the Republican Party used to stand for. And there are an awful lot of Black Republicans out there like that. The founder of this network, J.C. Watts, is one of those people. But that didn't mean that they didn't play bid whist with the guy from the Democratic side of the aisle. They did. And it doesn't mean that they didn't scream Boston when they had a great hand. They did. It just meant that they disagreed as to what the size of government should be and the role of government. Colin Powell fit into that mold. I think what we saw in Colin Powell, and I was going to bring this up a second ago, Sharon, too, was that for Black America, he embodied what our fathers wanted us to be when we grew up. The guy that opens the door for the woman coming out of the supermarket, the guy that shines his shoes, the guy that makes sure that his suit is pressed and that his hair is combed and that his teeth are cleaned. He was the guy that we wanted to be in Black America, not just because he was the general, but because he was the gentleman. And I think Colin Powell represented the best in all of us in a lot of different ways. I know that as an African-American man, he reminded me of the Black people that I went to church with. Guys that literally drove cars for white families, but when they showed up on Sunday, they made sure that they knew how to treat women. They knew how they wanted to be treated. They respected others and they respected themselves. And I think that will wind up being his greatest legacy, is that he was the best of us.
Respected, very much respected. Role model, as you mentioned, and somebody who could speak on both sides and play bid whist or spades if you wanted to, and not renege too. That kind of guy. We're gonna miss him. Gone too soon. It's amazing once again that this information is not getting out. I had no idea that he was even in the hospital with COVID-19. We had no idea that President Clinton was in the hospital, so it's amazing that these things aren't getting out. But we're happy that we have you here with us, and like you, I was shocked in the middle of an interview being told about this. It's a devastating loss for me, and I'm pretty sure I know it's a devastating loss for this entire nation.